Hey guys, what's up? I wanted to give my thoughts on the brand new Panasonic G9, and I'll just say as a user of the G85, which I'm filming this on, this camera has me very excited, so let's get started. Right off the bat too, I would suggest looking at this video from Three Blind Men and an Elephant Productions. It's an interview between them and Sean from Panasonic. They go very deep into detail on the G9, the G85, the features, the minutia of the video and autofocus and all the little improvements they made. Definitely check out that video. I'm going to link it below. Okay, so right off the bat, where does this camera fit into the lineup? Well, Panasonic has indicated that this does not replace the G85. It's going to be sold along the G85, as well as the G7, which I'm kind of surprised is still being produced, but it is. So you'll have the G7, the G85, and then the G9 as the flagship stills-oriented camera. Now, this is so much more than just a retooled GH5. The body is different. It's designed with input from stills photographers rather than videographers. So it has a very huge and meaty grip. The button placement, the dial placement, all that has been taken into account. And possibly the one feature that has me the most excited about this camera is this enormous EVF. I mean, take a look at this thing. It's so immersive. The magnification is 0.83x. Now that's larger than any other optical or digital viewfinder on the market except for the Leica SL, which is an order of magnitude more expensive. So you get essentially the best EVF available in the market. The magnification is so high, let me just say they've built in a 0.77x and a 0.7x reduction option. So if you have eyeglasses and you want it kind of to be smaller and further away looking, you can do that. But you get this huge EVF. It's the highest resolution. It's just like the GH5. It's a 3680K EVF versus 2360K on the G85. Now, equally impressive is the refresh rate on that EVF. On the G85, you're getting 60 frames per second, but on the G9, you're getting a full 120 frames per second with no blackout. Now, that's 120 frames per second, 0.83x magnification, and 3680K resolution. This is an EVF to just dive into. I cannot wait to see this thing in person. Something else that's apparent is the inclusion of a top-mounted LCD. Now that's something that's particularly nice for still shooters because you're always looking up, looking down. On the G85, I have to look at the back screen. You have to look through the viewfinder to see it. So if you're able to use that top LCD and switch off the back LCD to save battery life, I mean, it's kind of like the eco mode on the G85. You can get 600, 700 shots per charge, maybe more. The G9 does have the same style of eco mode as the G85 that extends the battery life to something like 900 shots. You can, of course, add a battery grip to double the stock battery life. But yeah, the LCD is both a convenience feature and a battery life extension feature. It lights up kind of a dull orange like Canon cameras at night, so it is illuminated. So aside from the larger EVF versus the GH5, another advantage is the stabilization. Now, the in-body stabilization on the GH5 and the G85, both of them are 5-stop. Now, on the G9, they've taken it all the way to 6.5 stop, matching the OMD EM1 Mark II. Now, it may not sound much, 5 versus 6.5, but when you're really pushing it in low light, that can make a big difference. And that's 6.5 stop advantage for stills and for video. And that's, of course, further compounded on, especially with telephoto lenses, is what I've been told. Dual IS2 carries that 6.5 stop out much further than it would 6.5 stop at a closer, like a wider end distance. Based on the interview I saw with Sean from Panasonic, it's kind of the way the standard is calculated. Basically, that 6.5 with Dual IS2 holds true further out into telephoto than it would just at wide angle. So you're getting better IBIS, and with the better hardware and the better gyroscope for that 6.5 stops, they've also included a 40 or 80 megapixel pixel shift mode that will shift that sensor either 4 times or 8 times depending on the setting. This usually takes just a fraction of a second, and in the camera it will compile a 40 or 80 megapixel JPEG or RAW file. And this comes with all the caveats of that setting. You do not want to use this on anything with movement, even as much as a wind for landscape, leaves moving, branches. This is for a totally static subject, but just having the option of getting just ridiculous resolution with that mode is pretty cool. Now, something else we get over the GH5 is this new extremely high-speed shooting mode. Now, this is full resolution, raw JPEG. You're getting 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter with continuous autofocus and 60 frames per second with fixed autofocus. Now, this is right up there with the likes of the new Sony A9. I mean, this is just phenomenal performance with that electronic shutter. Now, the big question mark is rolling shutter. Panasonic has claimed that it's not going to be an issue, but that's something we just kind of have to see for ourselves. I know when the Sony A9 came out and made those claims with its electronic shutter, people were kind of skeptical, as they should be. So I guess right now we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to come in terms of real-life shooting with that electronic shutter, 20 frames per second, and the accuracy of that continuous autofocus. Another nice addition is the ability of the camera to not only charge over USB, but operate over USB. So you can essentially have infinite battery life plugged into a wall or plug into one of those big USB power bricks and get just phenomenally long battery life from the G9. Panasonic has also improved the JPEG engine over the GH5 and the G85 to produce smoother gradations, better dynamic range, just an overall higher quality JPEG image. Now, it remains to be seen if there are any improvements whatsoever to the raw image quality. I shoot almost exclusively raw, so I'm kind of waiting to see if there is any better image quality over the GH5 in that respect. Panasonic has also claimed greatly improved continuous autofocus performance in still shooting on the G9 versus the GH5. Again, this is something that we need to see some testing on. They've made some pretty lofty claims. Most people who use Panasonics and use DFD, which is a purely contrast-based system, say it's phenomenally fast for still shooting, but for tracking it's not quite there yet. So we'll see how well that does in the G9. So even though this is a primarily stills-based camera versus the GH5, it retains some pretty cool video-oriented features from the GH5. First of all, we are getting 4K 60. Now that is at 8-bit versus 10-bit for the GH5, but you're still getting a nice clean 150 megabit per second codec. I believe there is a recording limit on internal 4K 60. I think it's a 10-minute limit. There is a limit on 4K 30, 4K 24 at 30 minutes. But those are pretty easy to work around, and I believe if you use an external recorder, you don't get those limits at all. And going back to that, just like the GH5, you're getting a full-size HDMI port. You're not getting a micro HDMI. You're getting a full-size port you can plug into, making connection a little bit easier. You're also getting a headphone jack, which is something that the G85 does not have. And in addition to that, the microphone jack for the G9 is moved up to where it is in the GH5, up and away from that LCD screen. So, right now I'm recording on my G85 and the jack for my lapel mic is coming out on the side of the camera, smack in front of that LCD. So kind of an inconvenience. On the G9, that would be relocated up to the top where it's not in the way. So unfortunately, we are getting a body that's quite a bit larger than the G85. It's a touch smaller than the GH5, but not by much. Likewise, the weight is slightly less than the GH5, but not by much. So those of you, including myself, wishing for kind of a souped-up G85, probably not going to get it. This camera does have a beefier grip. It's made for those new long telephotos like the new Panasonic Leica 200mm f2.8 that was just launched. And let me just mention that it looks like the G9 would have no problem fitting inside my existing camera bag. This is the Low Pro Tahoe BP150. It's able to hold my G85 and all 5 lenses, the charger, extra batteries, my iPad, and 2 microphones. So even though the G9 would be a larger camera, it would not adversely affect the size of my kit, which is a big plus. I'm not going to do a video on that lens, but it's $3,000, includes a 1.4x teleconverter with the lens. Based on the MTF charts, it looks like a phenomenally sharp lens, just top quality, dual IS, weather sealing, the whole bit. It's a lot of money to ask, but it looks like a top quality optic. Another difference between this camera and the GH5, unfortunately, it does not get the GH5's 3.2 inch 1620K LCD. It gets the same LCD as the G85, which is a 3 inch 1040K LCD. It's not a bad display, but it would have been nice to have that little extra bit of resolution and size that you get with the GH5's tilting LCD. So the question is, will I be upgrading from the G85? Not just yes, but hell yes. I mean, every time that I use the G85, I think this is just such a well thought out camera, but you just want more. You want that next step. You want the bigger, sharper EVF. You want the better sensor. You want 4K 60. I'll just say, like, shooting 60 frames per second versus 24 it's so liberating in terms of smoothness and especially panning. Like, anytime I pan with 24p, I have to be so careful to just go so slow because otherwise you get judders. And on 4K 60, it's just so fluid. So I think I would shoot like exclusively 4K 60 with the G9. It's just, and 4K 60 is still such a premium feature that I think a lot of people, including myself, are still surprised to see it included on the G9, which is a primarily stills camera. But yeah, Panasonic threw it in with the G9. Excellent. That's something that's definitely going to push me to upgrade from the G85. Now, yes, it is bigger and heavier, but the flip side of that is you do get better ergonomics, especially with longer lenses. Now, my G85 is generally fine, but I notice with some lenses, like when I mount my 100 to 300, the way this taper here is on the forebarrel, it really crowds that grip, and I find myself kind of watching my fingernails to make sure I'm not going to scratch the finish when I hold it on the camera. So the G9's beefier grip makes it balance better with longer lenses. You get a few more direct access buttons. You get that control wheel on the back, just like the GH5. So yeah, you get a bigger body, but it's full magnesium, front and back, top and bottom, just like the GH5, just top tier build quality. You get weather sealing, of course. So you just get a more premium feeling product, even though it is a little bit larger. Something else over the G85, I've said this several times, I'm saying it again, that EVF just looks fantastic. I mean, I just cannot wait to try that thing out. Twice the refresh rate, a big bump in resolution, a big bump in size, no blackout. I mean, this is just like a top tier EVF in this camera. Cannot wait to see it. Even though I don't really find the sensor in the G85 lacking for my style of photography, it's always good to have a better sensor, getting a little bit more resolution. I think the big benefit is going to be in dynamic range and tonality, getting an image output that's more reminiscent of an APS-C sensor than a micro four thirds sensor. They're saying that this has the best image quality of any micro four thirds camera. Can't wait to see it. Pixel shift is something I'd like to try out. It's not something I require, but again, it's something that would be really cool for certain types of static photography. Just getting that mind-blowing 80 megapixel resolution. Great tool to have. Great use of that new hardware for IBIS. And going along with that, definitely having that 6.5 stops of IBIS versus 5. Better capabilities for telephoto, better smoothness for video, which I found already to be excellent on the G85. So, I mean, I was just blown away with the stabilization on the G85 when I bought it, and it looks like the G9 going to take that to an even higher level. So essentially this gives me everything I wanted from the GH5 without all the stuff I didn't want. It doesn't have all the, real heavy codecs that the GH5 has, but you're getting better stabilization, you're getting that pixel shift mode, you're getting a top LCD, you're getting an even larger viewfinder. I mean, this just looks like a still photographer's dream, and honestly, I think this would have been an impressive camera even at the GH5's price of $2,000, but Panasonic brought it in a little bit lower at $1,700 body only. So yeah, I will definitely be upgrading. I'll probably be selling my G85. I also have my whole Pentax kit. I have a K5 and 5 lenses. I've been unable to sell it on Craigslist. There's just no market for Pentax gear, so I guess I'm going to put it on eBay. But between selling this and the Pentax kit, I can easily pay for the G9. and I can use it with all my lenses. Right now I'm shooting with the 7-14. Oh yeah, something else, the G9, just like the G85, uses the full sensor readout for 4K and 1080p. You don't get any crop whatsoever in video. So right now, shooting 4K on the G9, I would be getting an even wider frame of view than I'm getting now. So that's always good to have. And of course, the benefits of the G9 would extend to all of my lenses. I have the 25mm f/0.95, the 12-60 f/3.5 to 5.6 kit lens, weather sealed, the 42.5 1.7 stabilized, and the 100-300 Mark II. I would likely stay with the same lens lineup on the G9. I would possibly upgrade the 12-60 to the Panasonic Leica version just to have a better daily driver. So to sum up, this camera takes all the best attributes of the G85 I want with none of the extra video features I don't want. You get a top LCD, you get better stabilization, you get a huge EVF. I know I've been talking about that a lot, but I just love the idea of this EVF on this camera. So yeah, I will be definitely upgrading from the G85 to the G9, probably be pre-ordering one. So yeah, thanks for watching. I know there's a lot of information in this video. I've been trying to fit it all in here, but there's so much to talk about in this camera because it's a brand new thing. It's not an iteration, it's a retooled G85. It takes, you know, parts of the G85 and parts of the GH5, puts it in a top spec pro body. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement over this camera, and I cannot wait to get one. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.